Okay, we're good to go.
Okay, thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Housing Overview and Scrutiny meeting. It's now 7 p.m. and I would like to start the meeting. I'm Councillor Worrell and I'm chair of this committee. I'd like to remind everyone present that this meeting is being recorded for publication on the council's website. As this meeting is being held at the Beehive instead of the council chamber, there is a time limit for the use of the venue, which is until 9:30. Items on the agenda are not concluded by 9:30. We will adjourn this meeting and recommence at the next Housing Overview and Scrutiny meeting. If this happens, we will look to adjourn once the report has been concluded. Officers attending virtually on Microsoft Teams, please can you raise your hand option when you wish to speak? Grace will note this down and will let me know. Councillor Kerrin has requested to attend tonight's meeting for the Housing Development Programme update item. I have accepted this as he wishes to contribute on his item in regards to CPI in his. Moving on to the business meeting, apologies for absence.
No. But Councillor Van Dijk.
Councillor Van Dijk. Well, we'll proceed without him. Okay.
He may have done the same as me and turn up to the South East Essex College.
He may well have done, but he'll find us hopefully. Yeah.
It's written on, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, not to worry. We'll just move on to item 2, and I move that the minutes of the Housing Overview and Scrutiny Committee held on the 14th of October 2021, which was the postponed meeting of the 21st of September, to be approved as a correct record. Everybody agree?
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 3, which is I've not agreed any items of urgent business. However, we have had a briefing note, void numbers and processes followed, circulated again on the 26th of October 2021. Are the members happy to confirm that they received and read this briefing note?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, okay, thanks everybody. Declarations of interest, does anybody have any declarations of interest for the agenda tonight? No, thank you. And moving on to the first substantive item, which is the Housing Development Programme update on pages 13 to 18. Can I ask Julian Wayne for an update, please?
Yes, so good evening, Chair, good evening, members. And I think I've already taken a mental note that next time I'm asked to come and talk to you, I shall come and see you in person, because this is quite an unusual experience. But nonetheless, the report before you is one of your regular updates. This particular report does 2 things. The first is it brings you back the report and on the review process that you requested on the approach to potential development sites. The process itself is attached as an appendix to the report, and the revised process, which replaces the sites option list, essentially gives you an early review of housing development for members, and following that, if members are in agreement that there's a potential for development site, it would then go for a professional team to be appointed and for a detailed development proposal to be prepared to a stage appropriate for proper consultation with both residents, and then of course more detailed consultation with members as it goes through that process. It's worth noting that the process of resident consultation that you agreed some time ago has been previously well regarded or broadly positive, and it's important to continue to ensure local residents and stakeholders are fully consulted on those development proposals. The second part of the report gives you an update on a number of sites. I have Kelly Miles with me to take any detailed questions you've got on those particular sites. The report is before you for consideration and for questions.
Julian. I think it's probably Martin. Did you want to, before I open it up for a general questions around the committee, did you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this, and thank you, Chair, for letting me just come to ask a couple of questions on this item. I've come to ask about an item which isn't in this. Hi there. I've come to ask a question about an item which isn't in this report, which I would have probably expected to have seen. You'll all be aware on 14th of October that a press release went out from the portfolio holder for housing announcing 86 flats to be council flats to be built on the CO1 site of the civic offices, and in that press release it was said that a viable financial model was being built that will allow the council to progress our plan. So I'm just wondering, what is that financial model, and when will we be seeing a detailed report for something which is actually quite a significant development?
So thank you, Chair. May I take the response?
Yeah, of course.
Yes, thank you. So the answer to your last question is that this is aimed and intended that a report on CO1 and the development potential will come to your meeting in January. That is the target and instruction that we've been given, and it's fair to say, in terms of the models itself and the design of that development, that work is still in progress, hence that it's timetabled for that meeting. So fair amount of work to be done, but at that meeting the models and the proposals will be unveiled in detail.
So,
Did you want a second?
yeah, so in essence, it's been sort of announced, but there's not the plans yet. Just before I just say some more on it.
Well, Chair, I know that there's been a number of inquiries on this point. You'll recognise that it's not for me to comment on the announcement, but I can tell you that work is undergoing. I know a number of member inquiries have received essentially the same reply as I'm giving you tonight, and so the work is timetabled to come back here in January.
So, okay, cheers. So thank you for that. So just when it comes back in January, I wouldn't mind if I could be invited to that one, Chair, because it's not an insignificant number, because 86, there's actually 53 flats in each of the high rises, and so there's going to be a lot around the feasibility studies, the groundworks, and really crucially the making it sustainable, so, like parking and things like that, because where it's situated opposite the Seabrook Rise estate, which, as you know, I'm here as a ward councillor, not in any sort of shadow role as such. So in that report, can we expect to see what's going to be happening with parking and how any mitigation for the estates that are nearby? Because if, for example, as a lot of people assume, the CO2 could end up becoming housing as well, we could be looking at sort of 3.5 tower blocks worth of housing just in that space that is currently the civic offices.
You can certainly expect to see stuff on parking in the report. You can certainly expect to see some commentary on sustainability, and I think it's early days to expect a complete piece on mitigation, but we would certainly expect a comment on the substantive elements that you are talking about, even at a high level.
Yeah,
Cheers.
We'll get you to be invited.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
So first of all, I guess really just following on from that is after looking at the press release myself, I thought it was a little bit opportunist to come to our committee, and the role of having the scrutiny member was for us to have an update from him and not just announcement. I too wrote and written to John Clark to ask for how it all works, because we do know that they are supposed to be private for the build of the new offices, which won't happen. And I've been assured that actually there is no finance, and that Sean will be here to explain that to us in January. So I guess that's the same report that in January we would see some finance around it. Just don't want this committee is for scrutinising and not for people to springboard their press releases when cabinet's the place for that. So we're certainly not. So and I did tell Councillor Spillman, I contacted him myself. It won't be a surprise to him. I contacted him the very next morning to tell him how disappointed I was that our committee for that purpose. But moving on to the report, wants to ask questions first. No, you don't want to go first, Joy?
Oh, I've just got something. Jeremy, sorry, can you hear me?
I can now.
Right.
So yeah.
It's just really obviously these are not coming forward yet, are they? Most of these, is that right?
When we say most of these,
And not
The actual specific, you mean the specific proposal?
Tell him where you are. 3.9.
yeah, I'm on page 15, 14 and 15. Yeah, I just really wanted to ask about Lowen Road, really, the four homes that are going there.
yeah, go on, go ahead.
Just can you give us a little bit more of how they're going to look like? If some of these projects are going to look like Chadwell St Mary, then I don't think we've got an argument, because Chadwell St Mary have got to praise whoever did that. It's absolutely beautiful, you know, for a council estate. It looks really nice, and yeah, no, we've got to give praise where praise, and you know me, you know, we'll give praise where praise is due, and I think those people that have gone on there, they were all from Chadwell, so which made a difference. Yeah, I just wondered if from Lowen Road, are they going to be from Chadwell as well, or are they going to come from around the borough?
So Kelly, probably you ought to take the credit and answer the question at the same time.
I'm really struggling to hear. It keeps cutting out, so I didn't quite get all of the gist of it. But I think you asked what the four houses are going to look like, and I'm without actually showing you the design, which I don't have to hand. They are in keeping with the existing houses in the area in design. They meet current planning standards with regards to sizes. I really can't hear. So we meet current planning standards. So we have come back with 4 properties. We meet parking standards, etc. We were supposed to go to planning, and we did actually attend the last planning committee, but because of time restrictions, we were moved on to the 2nd of December. So we will be going back to planning committee on the 2nd of December. I'm quite happy to share designs or, you know, elevations so that you can see what the scheme looks like with the group. I can certainly do that. But yeah, we go back on the 2nd of December. I don't know if Ian or Evelina can talk about the allocations of the properties, because once they go from housing development over to allocations for housing, they are all 100% affordable housing properties. So can I pass that on to Ian or Evelina to answer?
Yeah, I can take that one. I don't know.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we will always try to obviously keep it for local people. So we've very often done looking at local lettings plans. So I don't see this being any different.
Okay. Oh, thank you. I'll go to Mike and you can come back and you want Mike.
So I just want to check on that. So when I read 4 new council homes, I read social housing.
Mm-hmm.
Are we saying this is actually affordable housing, not social housing?
We can. I don't have the detail to hand, but I can get back to you on that.
Right. I mean, there's a big difference, particularly, you know, when we know that what's considered affordable is well beyond the means of a lot of Thurrock residents.
Most of the previous ones that have been delivered or are being delivered are the sort of local housing allowance less percentage down, so they become better than the affordable, but slightly more than the social. So, but I can get back to you on that.
Okay. Thanks. Related to that, this one I guess is more for Jeremy. Apologies if I'm stepping that back a bit, but when I look at 3.4 in this report, it talks about a revised process being proposed. As I understand it, that would mean that as you come up with a proposal to build in a particular area, you'll come and you'll bring that proposal to us before it happens, which is great. My slight concern is, and I guess it's a little bit like what we're talking about here, that's a kind of a reactive way of doing things. What it doesn't give us is a clear idea of what's the bigger picture. So, for instance, it doesn't give us any idea of the the wider number of how many social units are being planned. What are the issues around being able to deliver those? I can look through these individual proposals here. I can do a bit of basic maths and then find out what I thought was social isn't. And come up with a completely wrong number. What this doesn't give me is any kind of idea over the next year or so, let alone the next 3 months, how much social housing, if any, is due to be coming on stream. And that's the kind of thing that I really feel we need to know.
Yeah, so if I may, Chair, the main reason I'm sat here talking to you, other than that Keith is on holiday, is that the council asked me to come and help by pulling together for you, building on the efforts of your existing staff who are working away on these matters for you, to pull together a housing delivery strategy. And that, in essence, is to take your priorities as a council, take the best ways of delivering those priorities, working out the numbers that are feasible, particularly looking at the pipeline, and bringing you back a strategy for the future. And in this particular instance, while obviously it's still a work in progress, and in terms of the exact timeline we'd be talking about, we've probably still got some work to do on that. But while obviously the next 3 months and the next 12 months is important, something of this nature will go over a number of years. And I guess straight off the top of my head, we're probably talking about a 5 to 10 year strategy by the time we're finished. So what are the concentrations of the pieces of work that I'm doing for you is exactly this strategy, to give you that wider picture and that context. Now, as a broad aim, we're also aiming to try and bring that to you in January as well. Certainly over the next few weeks, I'll be pulling the work together and obviously discussing it with your officers and bringing that forward. Now, whether we actually hit January or whether it's your February meeting, I very much hope to hit the January one, but that wider context is on its way to you.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Any more questions, Mike?
No, that's fine.
Joy?
Okay, thank you.
Anybody? Yeah, Joy, if I let you in, I'm going to let everybody else go first.
Yeah, just pulling on what Councillor Fletcher said, I think there's probably, I really wonder why it's come to us like this, really, because it might as well have not. And I don't mean that to demean what work you've done and what everybody else has done, but I think it's a bit, and probably the chair might feel that as well, why come to us now when there's no detail there? We might as well have just had it in January, and it just seems to me, and I'm not knocking, but it just seems to me a bit of a waste of time for a recommendation for something we really can't see, except for the 4 houses and 35 unit in Calcutta Road. So it might as well have waited to give you more time. It might as well have waited till January.
So I think, Chair, the update on the process was the critical thing here, and the view to get that back to you. And I think as far as the wider update is concerned, I think that's entirely right. This is only a part of that. So yes, I think you're owed a lot more information, and in the due course you'll get it.
Thank you. Has anybody else got any questions? Yeah, Councillor Martin.
My question is got to do with page 15, bullet point 3.2, and it has to do with Hmo costs. It did say that majority of the residents were either very satisfied or fairly satisfied. And one of the key areas you've mentioned here that is of lowest rating has to do with antisocial behavior. Reading through the documents, there's no suggestion of what could be done to reduce antisocial behavior in this particular area. Noting is a very big problem, which actually did impact on residents' well-being and other things. Could there be an omission, or if it wasn't, what was the solution to that? Thank you.
Kelly?
I am going to put Pete Doherty on the spot here because he's tenancy management and I'm housing development, so I'm not going to be able to.
I might wish to take it. I must wish to take that for Pete because he's only logging in for his item later today. So I think sorry, Kelly, you wouldn't have known that. What we've looked at in that report, and I think we stated here, we've looked at the sort of antisocial complaints, and there's not been anything recently of significance around that play area. Obviously, we are fully aware and have got services in place to deal with antisocial behaviour. We've got specialist housing and social behaviour team, and they deal with all of the sort of reports through to whatever is the appropriate outcome in the circumstances. So the area is visited on a regular basis and inspected, and any sort of reports are fully investigated and followed through. So we'll look at that. I think the wider sort of issues, how to ensure that the play area that is very often that comes with the new development is sort of well maintained and looked after. I think some of it will come within the sort of the stronger community. It's building that community of people that move in that will actually provide that best solution for that. So I think what we could take away from here is the sort of stronger focus on the resident sort of engagement and the community building. That's probably the best.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so that's
Okay, so I've got a couple of questions. So for me, and it sort of kind of dovetails, and I think maybe where Joy was coming from, in that this whole new process was to try to get some agreement about how this site options list, how they're going to go forward. Okay, because there's been maybe 3 years, I don't know, 2 years of arguing about what the sites are, where they are, how they're going to come through on the list, you know. So the list we're being told is, you know, it's not there anymore. We're going to go to the new process. But I'm very aware that the list is sitting in the background still. And from that, we know that, you know, the Chadwell Clinic is up for sale, the Skipper Place garages are not happening, you know, so the list had lots of pauses, stops, starts, pulled down the Prince of Wales pub. Now we've just put grass seed down, we're not developing it. We've bought other stuff, we've pulled the youth club down, you know, so there's stuff still going on that old list. So I think what needs to happen is there needs to be a refresh of what's coming forwards. And I think that we need to be rigorous and know going off of how we bring sites forward. No little meetings with councillors going off. The process is the cabinet member with the scrutiny chair with the relevant councillors to agree the sites in a room before it goes on the list. That's what the process that was put before us says needs to happen. So I think that there does need a refresh to say, this is it, this is what we're agreeing, there will be no deviation, so that we do know what that through list is going to look like. So, and I'd rather see 5 years worth of development on there than a piecemeal in the background saying, well, it was on the old list, so we're bringing it forwards now. Let's scrap the old list, let's get it refreshed and start anew and bring forward to us something that is a working document that we can work with. Just take off what's not going to happen and bring it back to us fresh.
So I think, Chair, thank you for that. I mean, I think, as I said to Councillor Fletcher and explained, the purpose of that refresh and that reset, if you like, is indeed the strategy that I've been commissioned to draft for you. And I think that when you get the opportunity to consider that and see if that works for you, that will give you some considerable comfort that this is the approach. I think the process that's been before you today will inevitably be a part of that, because you wouldn't want to tear up something so new so soon. Of course, as I've said to you privately, Chair, I think it's right that you should have an update on stuff from the old list, and I'm certain we would look to make sure you'd got that update, whether as part of the pipeline approach in the new strategy or as a separate update. I suppose my only caution in giving you this answer is I've been in local government and around it long enough to know that I can't necessarily guarantee you that nobody will ever deviate from a process and there will never be a meeting in a corner. But subject to that caveat, I'm happy to give you the reassurance of the update.
Thank you. And another question that I have on it is, can we be assured that different departments are going to start talking to each other around the site development list as well? I spent a morning on my own ward in Richmond Road trying to undo some work that the planning department have done about putting in a new entrance, which we know is the Richmond Road Adult Community College that's been closed, and it's on the list. So of course people think that the stripping out of the college and the pulling of it down means that the flats are coming and there's going to be an entrance. But the planning department wrote to 7 houses. So on Saturday morning, I was delivering 100 letters to tell a whole road what was going on and not 7 houses. So it's about planning needs to be talking to housing, needs to be talking to building development, so that, you know, streamline. We're supposed to be, we say we're consulting with our residents. I, as a councillor, weren't even told. So residents weren't told. So council departments have got to learn to speak to each other, because it all backtracks and it doesn't look good. You know, I want to build houses. I want to build houses in the right places, in the right way, and that's not the way when the left hand don't know what the right hand's doing.
Yeah. I mean, and Lynn's right, that because if we don't know, and I've got nothing in my ward, so I've got nothing really to me as such, but I can see, I know Thurrock really well, but if we don't know and the residents decide that you just told 7 houses, that's it. But if your 100 you've sent out decide they don't want it, you've got to go with them, because we as councillors, that's what we're here for. We have to go against something which we probably didn't really want to go against. So I think we've got to be better with it. I'll just ask you. Yeah, I am actually, because I can't see why this was brought to us, to be honest, Lynn.
I think that we need to agree on the process. I don't want to throw, you know, maybe you've got me wrong. I don't want to throw all of this out. I liked the new process that come forward. What I don't like is the old process is still operating in the background. You know,
No.
let's just, I want to be fresh with a new process and agree a new process that we as a committee agree. And then cabinet, you know, can rubber stamp it and say, yeah, that's it, that's the new process.
So
Like
I think,
the press releases, you know, the ad hoc press releases, which have been nowhere, you know.
so I think, Chair, thank you. The point is well made and well noted. I think, as we say, the strategy will give you a start on that. On your point about departments working together, all I can say is that in my relatively short time with you, I think the signs are encouraging and people are looking to work together. But I hear what you say and will undoubtedly make some comment on that in due course.
Thank you very much. And I do just I have one more question that I really want to ask you on this, and this is like looking at the sites that come forward. You know, it's about making sure that, and I understand that we've got to make the numbers stack up for building them, you know, and building costs have gone up, and we're going to be able to, we've got to be able to build quality homes, because it's no good building homes that are not good quality. But we've also got to build homes that Thurrock residents can afford. They need to be Thurrock affordable homes, because I have just this caution in me that's saying that there's going to be those families that are trapped, that can't move out, because what they're paying now is maybe £500, you know, for living in a masonette somewhere or a flat somewhere. They want to move into a house, but we're building houses that are 950, you know, and they haven't got an extra £400. So, and I know that this is our own success of living near London and being able to commute in, but the salaries in Thurrock don't allow for that. So I think that we also need to find a way of building homes that are Thurrock affordable and that are still good quality. So I'd like to just have that noted, that when we do bring sites forward, that we do bear in mind that not everybody can afford £1,000 or £1,200 rent to move into a social home.
So again, I think your comment is well made, and certainly my instructions as to the things to cover in the strategy we've talked to include affordability. Again, just to cover myself, I'm not sure I have a magic wand and I can cure everything in the housing market, but we'll certainly give you some options around that.
Okay. Thank you.
Chair,
Thank you. Yeah,
just one
Councillor
quick-
Van Day.
Yeah, Councillor Van Day, just one quick question. Have we won any awards, any of these houses? It says that they were going to be released in early November. It's the 9th. Have we got any results? Have we won anything?
Kelly?
So we attended the National Housing Awards last week. Unfortunately, we weren't successful in that, but we're going to the Brick Awards, which is an architect's award for Hmo Court, on Thursday this week. So we will let you know if we win that. We were beaten in the National Housing Awards. We were nominated. There were thousands of applicants. We were in the top 9, which is an achievement in itself. So to have got as far as we did is a huge achievement, and we were pitted by a beautiful scheme. So we lost out to a really lovely scheme, and we will go again next year. We've got a couple of schemes that we can take along next year, so we could still be an award-winning council, winning big national awards.
Can I just follow up?
Absolutely.
It's if you win, what is the prize? Just apart from the honour of winning, is there a prize? That's a surprise. There's no prize.
We get a trophy to put in the trophy cabinet in the civic offices. Last week's trophy was a chunk of wood, so we didn't really miss out on a huge amount in the trophy terms. But yeah,
We'll wait for
we're nominated.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for the work that you have done on this report. So no more questions before I move on. Okay, so members are asked to agree recommendation 1.1 on page 13.
I probably don't agree with it, Lynn.
No?
No, I mean, I can note 1.2, note on the project updates, but comment on the revised approach to consider a stability of council or something. No, because it's not there. There's nothing there to warrant 1.1.
No.
Unless we want to change the wording.
Let me just go back, Joy. 1.1, comment on the revised approach to consider suitability. Well, we have commented.
We have commented.
We just said we didn't like it.
Yeah.
You didn't say you've got to like it, just said you've got comments. So you've commented and said you didn't like it.
We have commented, yeah, but I just don't think there's enough there to. I mean, I'll go along if everybody else wants to go along with it. I'm not that enamored, but I just don't think it's worth 1.1 being there.
Chair,
We've noted the project updates, and that's all we've got.
So what
Project
would
updates.
change, Councillor Joy? What would it change if we didn't vote for it? What would you expect to come back?
More detail.
We'll just with one.
Next door, more detail, otherwise I'm
I think
not
that the
accounting
officers
for.
have definitely got that in the narrative, that we're expecting more detail in our future
Yeah.
reports.
Perhaps we could add something to that then.
Yeah.
Perhaps more detail.
Yeah.
Chair, that's in the minutes that, sorry, that, the committee has asked for more detail, and, you know, Julian has said that will come in January, so it'll be in the minutes.
Okay.
Is that all right?
Yeah, fine. Sorry to be pedantic.
No, weren't you
Obviously,
obviously
no.
I have to say I agree. I mean, it's always phrased in the same way. Note comment is a very neutral way of putting it. I think we just need to find some way of recording in the minutes that in noting, in commenting, we basically said that we need to see more because this isn't.
We're not doing
We've
enough,
asked for
we're
a
just
rainforest and they've
noting, you
given
don't
us
like
a-
noting things.
No, I don't, and I think that this has dragged its feet for long enough that we, you know, 2 years and we're still arguing about the process. You know, it's not good enough, so.
We should be moved on by then.
But if we've captured it, the tone of it, I think certainly will be in the minutes that, you know, we want to see more meat on the bone in our reports on this.
Yeah.
So I think, Chair, if I may, I think, as you say, the point is well recognised that you're looking for more meat on the bone in the reports, and certainly understand that, and I'll convey that to colleagues. I think, as far as the process is concerned, I've not heard any of you really dissenting that actually that process can't work for you going forwards. Notwithstanding that obviously there's issues about what's happened in the past and making sure you get the update, but given that I've not heard any dissent from the process itself, might I suggest to you that you do bless, for want of a better word, the process, and we'll move on into the next stage.
We do want the process. That's what we want. We want the process to be clear, transparent, and followed.
More meat.
Yeah.
I think that's two things, isn't it, really, Chair? A, we want it to be followed, so I think that needs to be noted, and as you said, B, we need to see the big picture.
I mean, we're an overview and scrutiny, we're not just here to note stuff.
Yeah.
Because I don't agree with that. If it's just, we're just noting something, we might as well not be here.
Okay. I'm going to move on.
She knows me very well.
I do. I just want to get to your last item, John. Right, so we're moving on to, thank you for that, Julian. So we're moving on to item 6, which is fees and charges pricing strategy 22 to 23 on page 19 to 34. And can I ask Ahmed to present the report, please?
Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Chair. My name is Dilal Ahmed. I'm the Private Housing Enforcement Manager, and I'm presenting this report on behalf of Kelly McMillan. The fees and charges pricing report are mainly services in the general fund, which is why I'm presenting this report to members, and I'm happy to take questions at the end. So I'm going to assume that members have read the report. Therefore, I'm not going to read the report in detail, but I will highlight the key points to note. So firstly, on page 20, section 3, it sets out Thurrock's charging policy. Sets out how proposed fees and charges are underpinned to ensure that all services are cost recovered. In the report, the increased fees are charged represent a mix of tier charges or increased in line with inflation, and this complies with legislation to ensure that costs are measurable and, more importantly, auditable. There are no deleted fees referenced in the report for this year. Turning to page 21, and this is section 3.6. This section provides a breakdown of existing charges and those that are increased for 22-23 in relation to HMO licensing, enforcement notices, civil penalty charges, caravan licensing, and the council's travellers' site fees. Under section 5, which is at the bottom of page 21 and it moves to page 22. In the HMO mandatory and additional licensing, we're increasing our license fees for the first time over the last 2 years, and they've been increased by inflation, and that applies for new and renewed HMO licensing. And just for your information, we have a total of 212 HMOs on the council's public register, and for 22-23 there will be around 13 licenses that are up for renewal. And in terms of this year, we have licensed 34, and the year before, that's to date, at the end of October. And last year, during the COVID year, we licensed 70. So that's to put into context the number of HMOs that we're licensing on an annual basis. In terms of housing enforcement notices, that's section 6. These are the notices that we serve in relation to when a landlord fails to protect the health and safety of tenants. And by that I mean where they fail to carry out work such as not carrying out works in relation to damper mould, faulty electrics, not attending to drainage, sanitation problems, or fire safety measures, including like or even excess coal, which can be harmful to the tenant. So in relation to housing enforcement notices, we on average we serve around 20 per annum. All of our penalty charge notices, and this relates to section 7 up to section 11, are all in line with industry standard. So generally all these regulations protect privately rented tenants that live safe in private rented homes, and that's free from poor property management and maintenance standards. And finally, in section 11, which is on the bottom of page 24 and 25, that we make reference to a new license fee in relation to mobile homes fit and proper person tests, and that's for to make that clear, for regulated sites with planning permission applied to site owners and site managers. It doesn't apply to unprotected sites, such as example of that would be sites where there's no planning permission or unauthorised caravan sites. And this test, which is the new test in terms of new legislation they brought in this year, is part of that process is an assessment to make sure that the owner of the site and the site manager are fit and proper person to own and manage that site. Finally, to end, just wanted to end just for information purposes. Obviously, I'm happy to take any questions in relation to any of the proposed fees and charges.
Thank you for your report, and who wants to go first with questions? Joy, as usual.
Thank you. I think I'll just leave now. Thanks, Jalal. I think you just shot 2 councillors down this end to know 212 HMOs. Do we know where they are? We had a few come up in Chadwell, was in one road. I think it was 12 houses in one road. I shouldn't think that they'd done much for that road, but I think they got stopped, that one. I think Councillor Rice stopped that one, and I told him about it. I really want to know where they are. I hate to say there's not enough detail again, but that's a little detail I'd like to know where they are. If you don't look on planning, you don't see them, so I think wherever they go up, councillors should be notified in whatever ward we are in. Apart from that, on page 25, Dalal, you put obviously the traveller site in my ward, Gammon Field, and you put the Gammon Field site is at risk by the proposed Thames level crossing to be located elsewhere in the borough. Well, as far as I know, it's not going to be relocated elsewhere in the borough. It's just moving 100 yards on. So, and I think I've got a question going to full council on the 24th if we get there. So I think it's not moving. So I don't know why that was put in there. It isn't moving to another part of the borough. The Thames crossing, if it happens, isn't going to affect them. They're just going to move sideways now. So just those couple of questions, please. Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of the location of the HMOs, what we can do is that we can produce a map which will highlight the areas and wards where the HMOs are located. We also have on the council's website a public register of all licensed HMOs, which members or residents often go and access and read. I'm happy to produce that map and have that shared with members.
Hello, sorry to butt in there, but we're not informed of that. And the only reason I knew about HMOs because we started to get trouble in a road where there was one. We had children of 16 hanging out the windows and running up and down the street at 3 o'clock in the morning because they're not looked after by anyone. They're left there to their own devices. They haven't got anybody looking after them. So I think we need, as councillors, and I don't think Councillor Warren knew about that, and I don't think many other councillors knew that there was this site. We need to be notified more. If you don't look on planning, you won't see them.
Let the link put in, please, in the minutes. Yeah.
I'll send it across
Send it out to the.
Yeah, I'll send it across to Grace too.
They can be quite dangerous in an area, depending where they've been put. They can make a whole street different. You know, because then obviously some of them say 20 in a house. I don't know where you get 20 in a house.
If members, you know, want to report unlicensed HMOs or suspected HMOs, they can do so on emailing us directly or via us on the council's website. In response to your question about HMOs and being notified or consulted on their location, in terms of the small HMOs, which are the 3-bedroom lets or mandatory licensing for 5-bed lets, there isn't a requirement for planning permission for those smaller type accommodation. It's only when they become the larger accommodation type that they would then require planning permission. And I think that those are the ones that have come to light. You get notified via planning.
They do make a difference though, Dale. We had one put over the new housing over on near Woodview, the new housing estate over there. There was one put there with about 6 children of 18 and over, and they've all got cars. It was a 2-bedroom house. Obviously we stopped it, but that's not the point, is it? It's things going through that none of us, you know, if we weren't involved in that, we wouldn't know where to look, and new councillors wouldn't know where to look. You know, so I think we do need to be notified more.
We'll make sure
Yeah, they're going.
to the committee. Can I just ask something on that same before I open it up to anybody else? Do we know how many hidden HMOs we're really looking at? You know, we've got 212 registered. You know, what do you think, you know, we've got really as HMOs?
So in terms of our suspected list of HMOs, we're investigating up to 2,500 suspected HMOs.
Wow.
So the scale of number of unlicensed HMOs is obviously higher than the number of licensed HMOs. We have a program of visits to carry out of those properties, and we're always gathering intelligence from various council database systems. Obviously, last year we were unable to carry out majority of our program visits because of COVID. But that program is reinstated this year, and we're regularly detecting a number of licensed HMOs and taking the appropriate action under our enforcement policy.
Okay, thank you. That's a bit worrying. It's a little bit worrying. I mean, we think we've got. Has anybody else got any questions? Yeah.
He hasn't answered my question.
Chair, should I just go back to the
Yes,
other at the traveller site?
Yeah.
Evelyn, I can't see if Peter's online.
No, that's fine. I can take that one as well. No, you're absolutely right, Councillor. So at the moment, the plan is to move sort of close by. So that is, I don't know, at the point of writing the report, there is definitely a mistake. It reads as it's somewhere in the borough, but it literally is next door to the site.
Which is definitely somewhere in the borough.
Which is the site. But it seems to imply somewhere else in the borough, where it's exactly the same
Well,
spot.
again, we'll have it in the minutes that it was, that, you know, that it will be amended to say it's moving 100 yards. Basically, it's only moving.
It's probably not even that.
No, I know it's not.
No.
I've seen it. Okay, Councillor.
Oh yeah, my question is derived from page 19, the executive summary. And it did say here the charges will take effect from the 1st of April 2022. I just want to find out if these charges will be capped. If they will be capped, how long will the cap be?
Which fees are you making reference to that
It says report sets out charges in relation to services within the remit of the overview of the scrutiny. The charges dealt with are for the general funding of the housing services. So charges, I would think here, all the charges being referred to, maybe all the charges in terms of licensing charges, housing enforcement notice, penalty charges, planning, and all the charges here, if I'm correct. It says it will take effect from the 1st of April 2022. And if that is the case, I just want to find out, are these charges going to be capped for a period of time?
1 year.
One.
It'll come in within next year. Sorry, I've answered it for you.
Okay, 1 year.
It comes every year.
Every year. Okay, right. And my other question also is on page 20, 2.3 here. The fees and charges that are proposed are underpinned by statutory regulation and discretionary condition. I don't understand what you mean by the statutory regulation. What would be the criteria for this, for the discretionary? Yeah, maybe I just want to find out what would be taken into consideration.
So a statutory regulatory service would be mandatory HMO licensing. That applies, nationwide for all local authorities to enforce. And in terms of discretionary, these are services that we provide that we can make a charge for. So, for example, our housing improvement notices. So that on section 5, or section 6, our housing enforcement notices. Now, the council are not required to charge a fee for housing enforcement notices, but because of the number of notices that we serve and the time it takes to carry out that function, that's a charge service that we charge landlords for. So that's the difference between a statutory and a discretionary notice, a fee. There are services that we can charge for the service that we provide, and that's why it's really important that the services that we provide, they're measurable and auditable, because the landlord can appeal against the fee charge to the tribunal, and the council would have to explain how it calculated that fee charge, which is why it's important that it's reasonable, auditable, and it is a breakdown provided.
Okay, I was just, if looking at the discretionary condition, I was just wondering if you're going to be doing discretionary condition, is there any, at any point you do take maybe some kind of consultation in regards to residents or landlords into consideration while carrying out the discretionary conditions?
So in terms of when we consult, so before we serve notices, you would always engage with the landlord and consult in terms of this current situation. So before we serve any notice, there's a number of factors that we take into account before we serve a notice. You know, we also allow extra time in the instance of housing improvement notices before we would take formal action. Formal action is only taken for housing improvements as a last resort, where the landlord's failed to carry out the work and is putting the resident or tenants in high risk of harm.
Okay, thank you very much. I thought maybe it would have been very helpful if this is maybe what I explained in the document. I would make it much more yes, to understand for people like me. Thank you so much.
Councillor Pearce.
Good evening. Do we benchmark our charges and compare to rates at other local authorities? And are we above average or are we expensive or whatever? I want to know. If you could tell me. We're not cheap, probably.
So in terms of the pricing policy, we do compare and we regularly review our charges to make sure that they're fair and reasonable, and we do compare and benchmark against other local authorities nearby to make sure that the charges we're charging are not excessive or too high. So, for example, our Hmo licensing fees, like as I explained during my presentation, that we haven't increased our fees for the last 2 years, so we're more in line with our nearby local authorities. And equally, in terms of our housing enforcement notices, our housing enforcement notices reflect the time and the number of hazards that we have to remove at a property. So it's done on a scaling basis. If we're spending more time having to remove more hazards, the fee reflects the time and the number of hazards that we've identified at a property.
Dalal, your computer dropped so much that we can't see you at all now. Sorry.
We have the top of your head below.
Oh, yeah.
I apologise. I'm looking at the screen and I'm looking at the report at the same time.
Anybody else got any questions? I've got a couple. Thank you for that. I've got a couple for you. So, what is a penalty charge energy efficient regulations 2015? What is that?
Okay, so this is on page. This is on page 24. Penalty charge.
Page 21. It's listed.
Section 9 on page 23 is where we start to go into detail.
Okay, so is this page 23, the energy efficiency of private rented property legislation?
Yeah.
Okay, so in short, the law changed to protect private tenants, so that it made it illegal to let a property with an energy performance certificate rating of below an E from April 2018, and then for all new tenancies from April 1st, 2020. What we are doing as a service is that we have identified all those properties that have been and that continue still being let in the energy ratings of E, F and G. And two things, we've written to all those landlords asking them for a copy of their most current EPC rating, and we also check the exemption register to see if they're registered for exemption. Where they've continued to let the property at an energy rating below an E, we're taking enforcement action. But before we're taking enforcement action, we're offering them an opportunity to take advantage of some homeworks that grants that we have available, so they can bring up their property up to a safe and healthy home standard.
Thank you.
Good question.
Is it related to that?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
okay.
Who issues the certificate? Is it in-house council or is it an outside organisation?
They're independent energy efficiency.
They're independent from the council.
Independent from the council.
Yeah.
Okay, and the next question is about the charges. So I noticed that all of the charges are pretty much going up by inflation, apart from our discretionary one that's gone up by 10%. You know, so anything that we can only raise by inflation, the one that we don't even need to charge, by 10.5%, 10.89%, you know, so that's why have we done that?
So in relation to the housing enforcement, as explained, we're looking at staff time and the number of hazards removed. So when we've gone back and done a breakdown of our previous work that we've done in this area, it was felt that more time was being spent on the number of hazards being removed and the number of service complaints we're dealing with at the moment. So to put that into context, as I said, in the previous 2 years, we've averaged serving 20 notices. At the end of October, we've served 28 notices. So what we're seeing is more officer time dealing with Part 1 action, where we're dealing with an increase in the number of complaints by tenants that are living in poor homes with high proportion of Category 1 and Category 2 hazards, dealing with problems like damper mould, dangerous structures, poor drainage, sanitation, problems with pest control. As a result of that, the fees have increased to reflect those increase in demand.
Where does the money go to? Yeah, is it like totally cost neutral? It has to be cost neutral. Like there's no profit from this, is there?
Yeah, so we're not allowed to make a surplus, but the money that we do generate in terms of licensing income, housing enforcement notices, and legal costs recovered is all ring-fenced to for the private housing team. So part of the team is self-funded out of our income that we generate.
I do have another question, then I'll bring Councillor Fletcher in. And I'm sure everybody will be waiting for me to ask this question. And that's about carbon monoxide alarms, and that we expect all of our private landlords to have them. And it wasn't until I raised this 2 years ago that we realised that we didn't actually put them in our own council homes. So can we add some? And then last year we were told that by the time we get to this year, when we see people, all of our council homes will have them. So can we have an update that all of our council homes have these?
Jalal, we'll take that question here between Sue and I.
Okay, thank you.
I can confirm that all of our council homes that have gas have.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well done. Okay, right, and now I've got Councillor Fletcher's coming back again, and then Councillor Ripson.
Thanks. Joe, it's just really just the last figure on this list at the back, and we're talking about small numbers, but I've noticed that sheltered housing visitors, we've stuck their room fee per night per person up by 25%. I know the numbers are small, we're only talking £12 to £15, but there's generally a reason why people are in sheltered housing. And £12 up to £15 per night is the difference. Interested to see it's basically the last item on the list. But is there any particular rationale for hiking it by 25%?
Can I leave that for Evelina to give an update on that?
Sure. It's the very last line on the back. Sheltered housing visitors room per night per person.
I think this is a mistake on the sheet because this is a HRA item, not general fund item, so I'm sorry, but it's not part of, it shouldn't have been part of this.
So I need to get outraged to a different person.
So where do we need to go with it? Do I take it out completely because we don't agree that it should go up?
It still exists, presumably, it just doesn't fit into this particular
It
account.
just doesn't fit into this particular one, yeah, it shouldn't. I will get some clarity on this outside of the meeting.
As I say, I mean, the figures are low, you know, 12
It's
or
not though,
15 pounds, but
it's
it's a lot
They're
of,
staying Friday, Saturday and Sunday, it's not cheap, you
Yeah.
can travelling cheap.
I mean, the whole thing with sheltered housing, it can be a very low need distance. It just feels like the wrong population target.
Okay, so
I
we'll,
live in Thurrock housing, and a lot of people use that room when their relatives, like their mum or their dad, are very ill and they're not expected to live. So rather than leave them in hospital, they bring them back to their flat and they rent the bedroom. You know, and they could be there up to 3-4 weeks. So,
okay, so can we get some clarity on that and have it noted that wherever it goes, this committee doesn't agree with that? Has anybody else got any more questions? Oh, Joy.
Yeah,
Joy,
I wasn't-
come back in.
Yeah, I wasn't going to ask Jill, but you brought in fees and charges and and I've had a few problems, which I don't get a great deal of problems, but in Jesmond Road and Springfield Road, there are flats that used to be for elderly people, right, which they're not now, but they're sending the bailiffs in because people have not paid charge for door entry. Now, some of those flats are door entry, but the ones in Springfield Road are not. So I think it needs someone to go out there and see, because if you've got a door entry or your own front door, then you shouldn't pay the same as the people that have got a door entry, because the ones in Jesmond Road, I think it's numbers 2 upwards, I think, from 2. 2 is a house, used to be a caretaker's property, and up that way, they are not door entry. They've all got their own front doors, but a couple of them have been charged for door entry and the bailiffs are going in. So I think you've either got to get your act together for that one. Somebody needs to go out there and not just think all those flats are the same, because they're not.
Councillor Retzel, I'll take that. I mean, I would probably appreciate a quick email just with details that you've got so we can investigate it outside of.
I think they have been in touch with housing, but housing's not followed it through.
Let me have the details and I can look into it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you. Has anybody else got? No. Okay, so subject to the amendments of the fees and charges list, do we agree?
Yeah.
1.1 on page 19 of the agenda. Yes. Okay. Thanks everybody. And then moving on to item 7, which is damp and mould in council housing properties. And I don't know whether I should be welcoming. Sorry for you, but can I ask the Cadanzo to introduce?
Good evening, Chair members. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Susan Cardozo. I'm the strategic lead for housing assets that covers repairs. Part of that. So this report is an update following on from the report that came to the committee in June this year. It's taken on board the feedback that you gave at that committee and the observations you made. It doesn't, however, repeat all of the detail of that report. I'll run through the key points, assuming that you've had a chance to read it. The first thing to note is this report has gone back to 2015-16 now, so we've got 6 years of data that we've looked at to inform this. And in terms of, so it gives us a comprehensive view of the problem over that period of time. Right, so we really appreciate that living with any damp and mould in your home is a concerning experience and fully understand that the impact this has on our residents. We don't want there to be any cases but it occurs for many different reasons, as were outlined in the report in June. And as we discussed there, it's unlikely that we'll ever completely eradicate it for those reasons. Section 4 of the report gives some very detailed analysis of the history of the repairs using the data going back to 15 and 16. And what we can see from this is that it's not a systemic issue. It is a relatively low percentage of the stock overall that's affected. We can also see that the number of properties affected has been falling quite significantly over time when we look at that longer time period. We are set up to deal with the problem, and we want to encourage our residents to report it to us as early as possible. In the majority of cases, as shown in data, we do manage to eradicate it first time. However, there are a small number of cases, as we see in section 4.9 there, where it does reoccur. And this is where we're really concentrating in order to better understand what kind of investment is needed to eliminate it completely. We're also planning a stock condition survey, a revision of the stock condition survey, which is taking place from January to March this year. That is particularly timed to concentrate and focus on damp and mould, because where we have got recurring problems, that will be the period when they are recurring. We have put in place a number of improvements since the last report, all aimed at improving the service and the resident journey when they're experiencing these problems. I won't go through them all in the report, but just some of the highlights. We've given more staff training. We've revised call scripts for the call centre so that when people ring up that they are putting the right emphasis, taking on board comments that were made to previous committee. We've rolled out further training on fuel poverty to housing staff. We reduced the timeframes in reporting. Once it's reported to repairs, we've reduced the timeframes in terms of responding to those and taking action. We are also doing more detailed recording of the causes to assist in getting the repairs right first time. At the moment, it's not possible to identify precisely from the historical data what the causes were within that property or what room they were in, but we've changed the way that we're recording it from October this year, and now looking forward, we will be able to see that. It means if somebody rings in for a report in the property, we will be able to know whether that's a different place in the property or the same place in the property, because it could be a completely different issue. In addition to the improvements outlined in this report, I'd like to let you know that the Ombudsman has now released their report on damp and mould. It has a lot of recommendations in it, 26 to be precise. What we're doing now is we're closely assessing what we do as a service against each of these recommendations. So we're doing a piece of work, literally we've only had it about a week, I think it's been released, so we're going through it now to make sure that we take on all the learning from those recommendations. Committee might want to consider a report back once we've done that piece of work.
I'd like to see that Ombudsman's report as well.
Yeah, we can obviously put it in the minutes. We can send you the link to the Ombudsman report. When we have the results back from the stock condition survey as well, we will have done this piece of work to see where we are against their recommendations and where we might need to do things slightly differently, or what changes we're making. That wouldn't probably be till early summer next year, but I just wanted to put that forward. In summary, before we move on to, I just want to be clear that we fully appreciate that living with this problem is an unpleasant experience, and we're fully committed to, prioritising a prompt and supportive response to it. And through our continued investment in properties, we really want to overall improve the thermal efficiency of the stock, which will help to eradicate this. We won't obviously deal with leaks, but it will help in the majority of cases. And whether we do this through transforming homes or whether we do this through regeneration.
Thank you. Thank you. Joy? I don't even need to look. Joy's hands up. Sorry, Sue.
I've brings quite a lot actually. I'll try not to go into too much, because Sue knows how I feel anyway, but it's got, on page 35, it says a relatively small proportion of stock. Housing Service acknowledged that mould and damp is a persistent problem in the percentage. We've already analysed that, haven't we? Damp and mould, social housing. The trouble with damp and mould, and I'm going back 20 years now, because I've had it in Blackshots flats for 20 years now, and it's never been eradicated. Mears go in, paint over the top of it, and then it comes through again. And we can't keep blaming the people, because those flats were built with no drying areas whatsoever. So I don't know where we expect people to have all these tumble dryers, washing machines, because the flats weren't built for that equipment, you know. And as I said to you earlier, so the blocks of flats now are leaking from the top and coming down the walls now. So, and you'll get the feedback from most people. We've had problems all the time. We've moved people out, we've had people in there. One person took me 18 months to get her out. And then we've asked to have it condemned, and now we've put someone else back in there who's having the same problem. So it's, you know, we could do that offline, but that's wrong, you know. I just think Blackshots flats are probably one of the worst flats that I've ever known in Thurrock. And they've always been wet. We can't tell people to keep opening the windows, because if you're high up and you've got a small child of 2, that child will find a chair, because we have had one person fall out of one of those flats years ago and fall to her death. But you can't ask them to do that, because to open a window, you know, a little child will find a chair to bring forward to get onto a window and out. So I think we've got to, well, we know what we've got to do with them is put some fireworks underneath it and take them down altogether, because I think they're just, let's say Councillor Maney and I, we've got 38 years between us in that ward, and we have had every year we get the same things come through, and we've done nothing, you know, and
They come, well, hopefully.
Yes,
there is a
we hope we're going down that route. I hope we are, because we just need to, we can make the area look a lot better than it is at the moment. You put on page 37 in 3.4, so that it's not currently possible not to identify the underlying causes of damp and mould. Of course we can. We know what causes damp and mould. It's because there's no area to dry clothes in. What else do you do? If you've got a tumble dryer, you've got to put it in the tumble dryer, and you either have something coming out the window, so you're going to get whatever in those flats. They were built in 1959, and they're not fit. That's all I'm going to say.
Right, all right then, I'm not letting her back in.
No, don't let her back in.
I actually don't think there was a question in there, so I think it was just.
Well, most of it.
I have got a question on Blackshots flats though, so.
There is a question there, because we keep blaming the people in the flats, and it isn't their fault. No. Yeah. You know, and there's the argument is it's your fault. What you're doing in the flat is your fault. Open a window. Yeah. That doesn't solve it.
I did think actually this is part of the issue that, and I take, you know, the point made in here that people have, you know, I can't remember exactly what we said, but there's some misconception that social landlords need to avoid accountability. We do appreciate that, you know, that it's not just the resident, but you said something else, it has to be a joint effort with the council and the resident. Unfortunately, what is being said, and I appreciate that part of this will be the residents, what they're hearing, but it'll also be the way things are said. It is not being expressed to residents that, okay, we need to do something and you need to do something. Similarly to what Councillor Redfield found, this individual was on the ground floor and was told the best way to deal with it was open his windows. He'd had his flat broken into about 3 days before, so at least it would make the, you know, make entrance easier. It's not been very well explained. The other thing that Councillor Redfield mentioned is about, you know, treatment being applied and then it doesn't seem to work. I noticed under figure 4.6 or figure 3 under 4.6, I did, you know, my maths may be off, but I did a quick sort of total up of these sort of all the houses, about 1700. A third, so over 500 of those, you've seen reoccurrence of damp and mould within 2 years. What's when the treatment is applied, what's the normal expectation of how long that treatment will work?
Not long.
Okay. It's got lots of questions in there. Which shall I try to, I just want to go and address
just go,
first.
yeah.
So just to be clear, on the underlying causes paragraph that you referred to, what we're referring to there is that's from our repairs data. That's the historical repairs data. We can absolutely identify the causes from our technical surveys. What I was referring to there is just the way we're recording it at the moment on the system. It says there's been damp and mould at this property. It doesn't, what it didn't do is say what it was the cause and what the room was. It was, there's a repair, we went and did it. It doesn't say.
So it's for a specific property.
It's specific, yeah, property. The technical report that goes out and identifies what the work needs doing does. So that was that one. Now I'm trying to remember all of the others. Black shots were at consultation, as you know, at the moment. It closes on, we did look it up earlier, but very soon, in about a week's time.
We had a letter that said it was deferred.
It was deferred.
It was deferred because of the death of the MP, and then it's open again now.
It's open, and we were, a lot of us were out on site working with the consultation company last week, so it's very much.
The only bit of that question I didn't like, so, was asking residents if they like where they live. Yes, they like where they live. They don't like what they live in. So I think it could have been worded a bit better. Do you like where you live? Yes, you live in opposite of Blackshots Field, a park. Yes, you do like where you live, but you didn't ask. It didn't ask that question of do you like what you live in? Because it's the living in the property is what they don't like.
I think that question, if I'm right, is about the design or what we would put back on the site, because there would, as we talked earlier in the housing development report, if the decision is for those to come down, then we possibly do a right to return policy, which means residents have the right to return back. So that question is about understanding whether people would want to come back and what they would, you know, what they like about the area, not necessarily the property. In terms of underlying causes and the way we address the residents, this is why we have changed the call script. Some of it is quite wooden. I understand that because it's a call centre. You're calling when you call repairs. Those scripts have been revised. There's been further training given. Also, all our quality assurance officers that are actually in housing are undertaking now the field property training, so they understand more about the causes of this, because it isn't just.
So some of the comments that I'm getting are not about how people have been spoken to by call centres, but by named individuals. Okay. I think including quality assurance.
So we have changed the training. There are obviously, as we know, some build types and older properties that present much more of a challenge in terms of ongoing maintenance and management of the environment in them. Some construction types are much more difficult to manage than others. Some of them we've had a long time. And we might take, you know, we need to look at different action for those properties, which we are doing with Blackshots at the moment. Overall, the answer is to improve the thermal efficiency of our buildings and ensure that they are affordable for residents to keep. Not all of them are we're going to achieve that by just doing things to the buildings that exist already, if I'm honest. So, what was the rest of your question?
So I did ask. Yes, I did ask the question.
Animal treatment now.
Yeah, there's presumably an expectation of how long I assume you will have a standard treatment or a number of standard treatments depending on the damp.
It depends on the cause. So a lot of the damp cases you see there, they're not all condensation. So going back to the June report, a lot of the worst cases that I've seen are to do with leaks. Some of the cases in Keir Hardy House have been, the worst case have been to do with leaks, the roof leaking. It goes on, you know, you don't know it's leaking until it's caused quite a problem. There will be different treatments for that. In terms of the treatment that you put on to prevent the mould coming back, I don't, off the top of my head, know how long that's supposed to last, but really it's about us addressing the problem. Yeah. It's stopping the mould growing any further, because you need to stop the mould in its tracks. I don't know.
Yes. I mean, this is my understanding. It's just, you know, a third of them occurring within 2 years. It sounds like, okay, yes, I appreciate there are different causes, but that doesn't sound a particularly great strike rate. I mean, apart from anything else, it's
costing you then to have to go out and keep doing it.
The numbers recurring, if we go on to figure 5 in the report, it shows there the proportion of stock with the number of occurrences by damp and mould since 2015. The numbers actually that are having more than two or more occurrences is something, I think it's in here somewhere, it's about 400 and something. As a percentage of the stock, that's 4.46 stock, so it's quite low.
Yeah, but as
Yeah,
a percentage of the
for-
1,600 or so that have been dealt with, it's quite a high percentage.
It's, yeah, I see what you're saying. This is where we're concentrating, because what we need to do is get to the underlying causes of those problems. Of those 436, that's within the last period. So it may be, if we look at historically, that a percentage of those have been resolved, but we won't know until another year's gone past to see if it comes back again. But we don't want there to be any recurrences, obviously. It's, we're trying to deal with it.
Sorry, Chair, can I, through you, of course they're recurring, so they are coming back every winter, and I think if we're thinking of putting cladding on all we're going to do is shut that water in behind the cladding, because Morrison House is the one where it's running down walls. It's just running down walls, and we've had a child die in there, a baby, and obviously she had another baby, and whether that, I don't know whether we've moved her out or not. I think they've just got fed up with asking because nothing ever happens, and we fight as councillors and we can only do so much. And I think that we've been skirting around the subject for so long that it's got to come to a head at some point in time. We can't just keep letting it happen, because if water running down a wall, that affects the electrics in the house. What do? Do we wait for a fire? Do we wait for something to happen? And then we say, oh, we should have done that. And that's what I don't want to happen. I mean, I've been at it for 20 years now, so I don't want it to happen.
So I've got a question that's related to Blackshots flats actually, and that is, and Joy just said about the cladding of the Blackshots flats. So planning permission was given to reclad it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So what are we going to do? We're not going to reclad and then pull these down, are we? That seems like an awful waste of money. But that's what, it seems like a waste of money. How much money is that going to be? And then we're just going to put them all down. Yeah. Let's just cut to the quick and sort it out and come up with a plan, if that's what we're going to do.
So, presuming that the outcome of the consultation is positive in terms of regeneration, then we will do the absolute minimum works to the blocks while we have the decampment. We are at the moment taking a structural engineer's advice as to whether once we take that cladding off, whether we can leave them without it for that period.
Is it dangerous then, what's on there then?
No, we obviously can't leave the blocks in any danger, but we just
You'll make it worse though if you take the cladding off, won't it be even more porous?
At the moment, that needs to come off, because the reason we're taking it off and changing it is because the fixings are starting to fail, so that needs to come off. But we are taking advice as to whether then what position we'll be in if we leave it with no protection on there for the remaining life.
Wasn't it millions though, like 5 million or something?
It's a lot of money.
It was something like
So
5 million.
we will do the
wasn't
minimum.
it?
We will do the absolute minimum that we can. What we would need to do is to repair the roofs, to replace the roof probably, because the roofs do have had leaks, and I think we probably need to do those. But we would not want to invest any more money than we have to keep the blocks safe.
Can we put that money elsewhere then, on somebody else that needs?
Well, then the money, if we don't spend it on those, it would go elsewhere or towards the project that will be the replacement.
Page 38, 3.13. Can you tell us who we're partnered with to deliver the ECO at the moment?
Oh, ECO. So
Yeah.
what we're talking about here is there are a number of grants available at certain times for that we can bid for money to help us
And
provide.
have you done this?
So we've just put in a bid for the social housing decarbonisation fund.
Oh, good. That
So
finished last month, didn't
yes, that came out, and there was a very short period of time to bid for that. We have put in a bid for some money towards a scheme that we have planned over in Chadwell. I don't know if we will be successful, but we have put in a bid for it.
Because I asked this because there's an opportunity for the council to grab, I believe, millions of money to go towards councils so that it saves you putting the rent up, things like that for repairs.
And eco is another version of the funding.
Yeah.
There is a new round of eco coming out in the new year, and we're already talking to, that comes through the energy companies, so we're already talking to the energy companies to see if we can maximise. We will maximise any funding that we can.
Anything you can get, sort of thing, really. Thank you.
I've got another couple of questions. You know, again, this is about services and different departments not linking up. I could take you to several houses where I know they've had damp and mould on the outside of the render, because it looks like they've got snakes all over the house, and they've been like it for years. And you know, even when they're changing tenants, so I know this lady died, the house has been re-let, but it's still got all the little grey lines on the outside of the house, where we've gone in and dealt with it. You know, it's about, so then it needs finishing, because that is the street scene, you know, and that's what I noticed. And I mean, it's not on that house, and I know of a house that's been completely re-rendered on the back, and it's still growing. It's been like it for about 4 years. You know, so we've got it's about, you know, you're leaving yourself open for it to get back through if you don't go and seal in what's being done. So I think it's, when they do go outside, somebody needs to tick off the job that someone's been back and painted it and not left it grey. Okay, so just, you know, that's just a little heads up. And my other question was about Chadwell Flats. So last year, we had this, the year before, and it was going to happen last year, that they're going to get this new heating system in Chadwell Flats. And then a year later, we're only just going out to find somebody to put it in. So those families in Chadwell Flats, and you know, Blackshots are probably the worst flats, but Chadwell Flats are cold, drafty, you know, they're absolutely freezing. You've got families in them that are just about to face a year of storage heaters that don't work. You know, prices are soaring. These are families, and not everyone can get a grant. You know, so they're chucking their own money away. You know, why are we not getting a shifty on and getting this done? You know, it's a year, sir, and I was expecting it to be done, and it's like we're just going out to tender.
So since we got full cabinet approval for this, which was last March, we've been really busy with the background in preparation for this work. Obviously, you'll appreciate it, it's quite a complex scheme. So the first thing we had to do was to get the system designed properly. So we procured a specialist company, and we had to do this through a competitive tender process, so it does take a little while. That's done. The tenders are now out, and the tenders are due back next week. So we should have a contractor appointed for the work before Christmas, and we want them to start on site as soon as possible in the new year. But we're as keen as members to get this work underway as soon as possible. Again.
Absolutely free.
In the meantime, anybody who's storage heaters, and obviously they've had those storage heaters in there a long time, if anyone's got any storage heaters that aren't working, they need to report it as a repair. We encourage them to report it as a repair, and we will be fixing them. But you know, I'm as keen as you are to get that new system in.
I lived in the flats in 1987, and I was freezing then. God knows what like now. You know, it's like ridiculous.
So we've got a number of improvement works planned over in Chadwell. The first will be to get that ground source heat pump system in. I appreciate it seems a long time.
Do you think this winter, or
they will not have the system. They will not have the system up and running this winter, no. Because they've got to dig boreholes into the ground, something like 100 boreholes, etc., and all of the groundwork before
by next winter. By next winter, this is going to say we've done it, yeah?
Yeah. Is it air source?
Sorry?
Is it air source system?
It's ground source.
Ground source.
It's using the heat from the ground.
But isn't pump temperatures lower than gas?
you know, that's getting extremely technical, so I probably couldn't answer that in that level of detail, councillor.
Well, it's worth a thought, I think, isn't it? So it's gonna, if they're not insulated, the walls, say like you've got airy houses, then that heat's just gonna go straight out,
So
isn't it?
the Chadwell blocks, one of the things we are doing as well is we are doing the cavity wall insulation. They've got cavity walls there. They haven't got external wall insulation like the other blocks. They're cavity, and so we're redoing the cavity wall insulation so that they will be better insulated to keep the
Just need rooms,
Just, I mean, I'm sure it's different now. My understanding is that some of the properties, certainly around Oxford, part of the problem was cavity wall insulation carried out, probably talking about the other side of the turn of the century, which didn't work particularly well. It seems to have just transferred the damp from the outside to the inside. So are we comfortable that we know better how to do cavity wall?
I think technology has come on a long way in that time. One of the things we have done a lot of in Bellaston, I've been doing more recently, is obviously we've replaced all the single glazed windows. We did have a lot of single glazed windows still in those properties. Now the new windows have been put in the last year we finished that programme. They've all got trickle vents, so that is much better for the insulation. Just going back to your question about the externals and the painting, Councillor Wall. So we do have a painting programme now, which is working its way. It's got a lot of work to do. So there is an external painting programme. But also on some of those rendered properties, what we are looking to roll out more, and this goes back to the eco funding, are more external wall insulation on the street properties as well.
Like what we did in 2015, we've got
like what we did in 2015, exactly. But do more of that, and more of this eco funding we can get, the more of that.
Have we got some money for that then?
We're applying for it. One of the projects we've got, and I think I mentioned it in here, is we're doing the old non-traditional properties. We've got 78 of those on programme starting in after Christmas, and they are having external wall insulation.
It does make a difference. I have my
but there is more that we want to do, and the more eco funding we can apply for and attract, the more of those schemes that we can do, especially on those older street properties, that solid wall particularly.
It was one of the best lots of money I spent having my on actually. You know, it's really good. Can I just ask another question? And it may be a really silly question, but like you've got damp, mould and condensation. In these figures, is condensation counted as damp and mould? So it's all in there?
It's all in there. Those figures cover everything, whether it is a roof leak, some problem caused by the drainage failing, or if it's condensation. It's all damp and mould.
I mean, I know they're coming down, and so they should come down, you know, but it's still like, if you are one of those families, then 680 properties is still a lot of properties to be dealing with. So, you know, certainly not something we can take our foot off.
Can I just go back on that?
Absolutely.
What you've put, the works to the blocks include removal of existing wall coverings, installation of modernised wall insulation, refurbishment of roof, and renewal of windows, all which will enhance it won't. It won't. I'm sorry. It won't. I'd like to get down on back on my pedestal, but they won't let me. But this just seems to me a waste of money to put. If we're going to pull them down, what a waste of money. And if we're looking at waste, it's the biggest waste going, because we're going to redo all the windows and then pull the glassy things down. I think we seem like we've been fighting this forever, and
residents will be furious.
Yeah, of course they will. They'll be thinking, you're putting the windows in? Come off, it isn't the windows that are causing the trouble, it's the structure is old, you know. Yeah, and I just feel that we haven't really made enough of that to not do it. I don't know why we're going ahead to do it, to be honest.
Well, the consultation will be back really shortly, so we will know then what the decision is likely to be, and that will be before we carry out any works on the blocks. So
you know, Councillor Maney won't be happy about that.
So we won't be undertaking any more than we have to do.
But they won't come down tomorrow, though, will they? In all honesty, they're not going to come down tomorrow, so they have got to be made to be habitable and safe.
But they've not been done before, Lynn, so why do it now? we've left it all these years. Why are we doing it now when we're thinking of pulling them down? It says the effectiveness of the structures and 348 in those 3 blocks have got 300 and.
Sorry, which?
There's only 50
one?
in each flat, I think.
Sorry,
Which
Councillor.
one are you talking
The
about?
3 flat shots.
No, but what's the figure you're referring to?
348 individual. Well, it mentions the black shots, the tower blocks in greys.
Page 44.
It's not in greys.
Page
but, you know.
44.
Right.
I think that is referring to the Grays 6. That's more like that number.
Right, so it's not.
That doesn't
It's
include
not
the black
talking
shot
about
slots.
that whole
That doesn't include the black shot
sentence.
slots.
It's not called.
No, I think we're going on the basis of the Grays ones. The Grays ones, as you probably see,
Yeah, they've been really good.
they are
Yeah,
well
they're lovely.
underway.
Yeah.
They're stripped. We're already starting after Christmas. We're starting to put the properties back on, but they don't have the same level of problems, which is why we're consulting on the ones in
Getting
black
all that
shots
sea
and
air,
the
so
Grays.
it's not causing them any problems, is it? All that sea air blowing in.
But just to confirm, we do not plan to do any more than the minimum that we have to do if the decision is that they come down. If residents, the consultation comes back and the decision is to take them down, we will do the minimum works that we can, but we do need to keep them safe for the residents living in the minimum.
Absolutely, because it's not going to happen overnight in all fairness, is it? They're not going to say, yeah, they're coming down and right, we're going to start with
We've never done it, so why are we doing it now? I can't see the.
But I understand what Sue's saying.
Yeah.
We have to make them, people are still going to be living in them if they're coming down. So they're not going to come out and move them out next February.
Why not?
Sure, I don't know if you've seen, but Ian has got his hand
No,
up.
I can't see up there. Ian.
I think Councillor Worrell, you've made my point for me. So just to reiterate what Sue is saying, if the consultation confirms that residents want to move, and I suspect it will, I don't want to prejudge it, we then need a decant strategy. I think there are 169 flats. That's quite a complex piece of work in itself. We won't do anything over and above the minimum, but I'm sure this committee would expect us as a registered social landlord to ensure that residents during that time period are kept safe, and we wouldn't not want to do any repairs that will compromise their safety. So there may be repairs, even if it's for a month. I'd rather do the repair than leave our tenants in danger. So we must absolutely meet our obligations as a social landlord.
Yeah, I think my question is for Sue. I think a lot of work has gone in here since June. Just wondering if have you ever thought of setting any target? Be aware of. This seems to be doesn't really show how this could be measured. There's no kind of performance indicator on that issue. Maybe recently coming up with
Something we were taken down.
If I could take that, this is a fair challenge. We don't necessarily measure these things. I think in line with things that and I think there are some recommendations around as well. So I think when we reflect that report, maybe we should suggest some measures. I wouldn't necessarily like to call them KPIs because sometimes you get the wrong behaviour that tries to provide something that's visible that we would measure. And so that we can see if it's going in the wrong direction.
You think on that? No?
No, it's really helpful.
Oh, you got off lights then?
She don't be for years.
Can I ask members to recommendation 1.1 on page 36. Yes,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry, I was looking for the recommendation to pull down Blackshot Flat.
Yeah, yeah. I don't mind, I'll plant the first, what's the name?
Right, moving on to item 8, which is another, this is the yearly outing of the garage project update. Can I ask the deputy to introduce the report, please?
You're on
Yeah,
mute.
yeah.
You're on mute.
Try that again, shall I? Good evening, Chair. Good evening, committee. Can you hear me clearly?
We can hear you.
So I've got the pleasure of providing you with the report for this year. So just to begin with, the report's an update from the last report that came to committee back in September last year. So 14-month period since then. So just to pick up some highlights, really. The initial part of the report provides you with some kind of factual information. I think some important facts there that I'd like to bring to your attention. The fact that the garage stock is reduced by 207 units in the year, which is understandable given the development work we've been doing with them and the ones we've been taking out of use, which are no longer of use. We've let an extra 187 units from this time last year, and there are 394 less voids. So as you can see, there's been quite a considerable amount of work being undertaken, very positive work on the garages in the year. So the report goes on to confirm that we'll be undertaking a stock condition survey during the year to ensure that we've got probity around the way we're managing and maintaining the properties, but also to inform a longer term investment and management strategy as well. And then in section 3, which is the third page, we come on to 3 areas: income and expenditure, the customer experience, and customer satisfaction. So the income and expenditure there sets out the details of the income and expenditure. So nothing startling there, because it's all based on the profile that we gave you last year and just confirms where we are this year. The customer experience side of things is at 3.3. It picks up on improvements we've made to the process, the improvements to the website, and also in relation to our online form. So you can both start and terminate a garage license online. And then the section that follows on page 4 is in relation to customer satisfaction. And I think this really kind of substantiates the good work that we've been doing, and the customer satisfaction, which is standing at 92.3%, is well above the average and the target for any of our services. So we normally set around about 75%, so at 92.3%. I'm sure you can see it's extremely good satisfaction with the service that we're now providing. The report also picks up on some collaborative work we've been doing, in particular around Operation Q and the work we've been doing with environment enforcement and with the police in terms of the seizure of 10 vehicles, which were identified as either stolen or abandoned vehicles. And then finally, the report picks up on one of the highlights, really, I think, or the highlight of the report, which is the development work we've been doing around some of the garages on Delagi Close, or Delagi Close, I can't work out how you pronounce that, and the work that we've been doing there, where we've changed, as I say, a number of the garage blocks which were associated with antisocial behaviour, basically derelict for a number of years, into 2 really outstanding bungalows. So we've provided you with pictures as well there in terms of the before and after, and confirmation that we're also looking at other sites at the moment to see if we can replicate that project again in other parts of the borough. And that ultimately is it. I mean, I'm sure you've all read the report, so I'm more than happy to take any questions.
And I was the one that brought this in the first place. Really, no, thanks for this. I mean, what I've not seen in this is when the garages are actually going to be painted. You know, because they look everywhere, looks the same. So we're not moving forward by painting them and making the area look a bit better at all. Even in my area where I've got quite a few garages and they just look, they stay horrible. Yeah. It's lovely what we're doing and taking some down and we're not doing anything to the facade of them.
Could I come back to you on that? I mean, there are a couple of things in relation to that, Councillor, that I'd like to comment on. There are garages where we've replaced the doors, and I can get you information in relation to do that. And I certainly know, in terms of some of the sites that I've been to, there has been a degree of painting going on. So I can confirm that with you later, but I haven't got that information with me, I'm afraid.
That's what we were going to do. We were going to paint the garages that we've got at the moment. The doors. You know, not just paint over them, take it off and repaint them. There was something about the colour they were going to be, or whatever. I don't mind, they can be like blue stripes, I don't care, but just repaint them, because we've never, you might have put the odd door in somewhere, but we haven't looked after them in any way, shape or form, you know, and there's, what are they, £10, £11 a week for a garage?
Yeah.
That revenue isn't going back to looking after them and making the area look better.
We'll take it away. We've got a healthy budget for repairs and maintenance, as you can see in the report, and we'll just figure out whether the painting was the sort of the direction from last year. But there was definitely a lot of investment gone into improving garage areas and making them ready for that.
Can I ask a question? Why do we have to get consultants in to tell us the stock, the condition of our stock? What after? Right? Everybody else like, right? They need work done on them. Why do we have to get? We're paying consultants, you know, like. Why do we tell us the condition of our stock of our garages?
Just use me, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I'll go around with you, do it, show you.
Yeah,
I'll do it free.
Why do we need it?
So basically, the position we're at, we had the stock condition survey back in 2017 that told us a lot of our garages needed a lot of work, and we've been working around the sites on we do have some garages that are structurally but we know, as you see from looking at them, but it needs a structural engineer's report as to what exactly the best way forward is for them.
But we also
I'm looking at blocks of them.
But
that's, you know, that is specific science, so I think that is what referred to.
And these demolition ones that maybe work, these are next bungalows. You know, like
we are looking at the next. Sorry, Peter. I don't know if you can hear it. The question was about the next bungalows. So we are looking at potential sites for the next hub type project on garages. They've got to be sort of obviously certain build type in order to be able to add that modular elements to the services and things like that. So we are actively checking what we've got, with the view whether those projects are viable there.
And then they'll come through the housing development programme.
That's right, because this one was a pilot. That's right. This one was a pilot to see how the model would work, what the property would look like, and I know you requested to see them, so we're definitely working behind the scenes to get that arranged. But yes, and I think what we're saying at the moment, the first reaction is quite a positive one. We've got an ongoing review. We also want to check how they're performing, what is it like to live in them, what is the defect level and things like that. So once we've got all of that, we'll have a good idea whether it's a good idea, you know,
maybe
going forward.
Leave it 2 years then. Go there. In the first couple of years.
We definitely think that 6 months is a minimum for people to start to live there.
A winter and a summer. They need to do a winter and a summer in them, don't they, really?
But it's not a stupid question. Where do you park the car?
One of them has got a car parking space and the other one is just on the street.
That one, I think, came to planning. I don't know whether that was because it was the first of its kind, but would the rest necessarily come to planning?
It really will depend on the specifics of the site.
Yeah.
I couldn't possibly comment.
Once it becomes normal, I think that's probably then you'd start to see it in the delegated list.
You've got, let's just say, you've got to be in the right place as well, because we had Skipper Clays on the list at one time, but then when they looked at it, they couldn't do it because of the road turning in, and you know, it was just, so not all garages. It's all right, you can have some garages there. It's not right for everywhere.
Trouble is, most of the garages that we built were nearly all home, so they weren't made to fit the cars of today.
No.
So, but I think, you know, going back to your point, very nice now. most of the garages are not structurally, they're not faulty. They are not. All the ones round Laird Avenue, Springfield Road, Jesmond Road, they are not faulty. They just need to look aesthetically good. If you just paint the doors, it would just
tender loving care.
Well, it's just a bit of paint on them, because as just said, we're collecting £11 to £12 a week for those flats, but we're not doing anything to them. You know, and we were promised that you're going to paint them. I mean, I think Blackshot's area was the first one. You don't want anybody going in there just stubbing paint over the top of the door, because it will just peel off. But yeah, aesthetically, we have to make the area look a bit better. Otherwise, it's going to fall. No, how many bungalows you build, it's still going to fall down, because most of them are structurally all right. You know, it doesn't matter what you put in there. I mean, most people use them as storage, but no matter what you put in there, most of them are structurally all right. They just need aesthetically looking better. So I'd like something to come back and hurry up with it. It's
Next
2
year.
years to go.
Next year.
Well, I have got one more question, and I don't even know if anyone's going to be able to answer this. But to prove that I read this report from one side to the other, there is a load of legal jargon that I don't normally see about HRA money and repurposing. What does that whole, you know, legal jargon mean in layman's terms for this committee?
What's the
It's on page 56. Legal.
Ah, okay.
It's the legal. It's about the moving to the HRA and what you can be used for as a garage. What does that all mean?
So it means that everything about it has ownership, has got a purpose, and if we want to switch purpose, we need to. That's right. We need to go through a process. We in development very often this just happens. You've got a piece of land. It was initially designed and set up for garages, and then you want to repurpose it for building new homes. That happens. So I think legal colleagues are saying to us that's the actual place to tell us this, that it's all well and good you converting garages into other things, but just remember that in your stock asset data, they are garages for the purpose of storage or storage of cars.
And then they, once they become
So I mean, garages already sit within HRA. It's just a great
the garage
goes to the HRA.
Yeah, goes into the HRA pot.
Just doesn't go to paint them.
You just don't know.
Well, I
I'm
read
going to
it
come
here,
and
Chair,
paint
with-
them. Right, I go paint.
Yes. Here, these garage plots in 2030, so on.
Very sorry, I can't hear you. The sound is just completely breaking up. I didn't catch that at all, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I can't hear either.
You can't hear now.
Can hear you now.
Go again, Molly.
Wow. I'm thinking long term. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
These need for garage plots, will they be needed by, I'm going ahead to 2030 onwards? Because phasing out of petrol cars and the electric ones coming in, obviously they won't need these garages, because if I had an electric car, I'll probably put it outside my front garden, and therefore I need some plug-in equipment there. And I wouldn't want to go to a garage, be like we are now with petrol, queuing up, in this case, with electric, standing at a metre at a garage, if you get what I mean. These
Certainly.
plots.
Yeah, I certainly think that as with many of our assets, in terms of the change in use, particularly moving away from petrol and the move to, you know, more and more mobility scooters, you know, we're definitely going to have to review the provision of the garages and the sites that we provide as well. So absolutely, I mean, longer term wise, I think it's something we're going to have a complete review of.
In the very near future, by the sounds, doesn't it? Right, thank you.
Sorry.
John, you can.
Only quick, sorry, I was just come to what Maureen said. Have we done an actual survey of how many of the garages are used to put a car in?
I can't say for definite, because obviously the garages, once they're in use, it's a private aspect, isn't it? We're not allowed access into them, so we can't verify that one way or another, unfortunately. But anecdotally, what I can say is probably a large number of them are being used for storage purposes, given that my past experience where I've worked, we were able to do one in terms of some work we did with the police. And a large number of the ones that we were involved with were used for storage purposes. I mean, the other thing, of course, is that we all are very aware that the cars that we use today are generally much bigger than what we were using 10, 15 years ago. So they're not, and many of them are not being used because you can't fit the cars in them.
I just wondered, with the survey you're doing, or there was a young lady doing that survey, wasn't there, Sue?
Yeah, Harvey.
Yes, yeah. So she was doing the survey on sort of who was using them for, because I mean most of them are rented. I mean, some have been bought in with the house they've bought, or
yes,
you know, so you've got a problem there, haven't you?
Most
council property, they're just being rented. But I just wondered how many were, you know, obviously we've found motorbikes in them with the police, and we've gone down that avenue, haven't we? But I think I want to know, you know, if you can come back on us with that. I just thought that Claire was doing a lot more work than, you know, finding out what they were used for. I mean, I know we've got things in and nobody knows who they belong to.
Yeah, I can certainly look into that. I mean, we obviously know who leased them all from us, so we have that information. One of the questions that we don't put to them at the moment is the use that they're intending for them, whether they're going to be parking or not. But I will certainly look into that, and I'll try and come back with some information for you at a future meeting.
Go out to people who own a garage just to say, do you put your car in it, or is it for storage? That's all, just plain and simple. Okay, thank you. Councillor Fletcher?
Yeah, just that Councillor Redfield just made me think of something. A few months back, I was dealing with a query regarding garages in, I can't remember, it's off Mullins Lane. It's the old houses built on the site of the old, I think it was a nursery home. And they ran into problems because there are some garages down there, and somebody had an interest in renting one, but when they went into it, they didn't seem to be able to find out who owned the garages.
Right.
So I think there's a blank spot there where I think, presumably at some point, they were owned by the hospital, and they don't seem to have sort of gone anywhere since. So they exist, they're there. I think one or two people using them informally. But it didn't seem to be that clear who owned them, and they weren't necessarily council owned. I don't know if you know the garages I'm on about.
I'm afraid I don't know the garages you're on about, but what I can say is that we should be able to find out who owned them through the land registry search. So we should be able to get that information together. I mean, it's interesting because I was on site about 3 or 4 weeks ago with Claire, and that's one of the questions I was asking about how certain we are about the stock that we've got. Because bearing in mind, I say it's over 2,000 garages, and to you know, many other places where I've worked in the past, it's been a real challenge to try to find out exactly what garages we do or don't own. But I can actually say hand on heart that Claire, I would say 99.9% certain that we've got all the garages that we own. So I can check that out for you with the land registry.
That would be interesting. That would be useful because I think it was the council they went to, and it was the council that said to them, to be quite honest, we can't tell you because we don't actually know who owns those garages.
Right. Well, we should be able to ascertain that.
Lovely. Thanks.
Anybody else before I move on? No. Okay, so can we agree recommendation 1.1 on page 49 of the report?
Recommended Housing Overlay and Scrutiny Committee received this report for information and comment. We've got an outcome again, have we? Oh, yeah. And it's been going on for what, 2 years now? Brilliant. Not more of an outcome, really, on something.
That's more of a sort of a fundamental, almost like a cultural change that as a scrutiny committee, you would start to expect us to see these things come to us with something more tangible as a.
Yeah, not after 2 years.
We had the same discussion. Clean Green, we had a similar discussion.
We did.
And corporate.
Yeah.
And we started to push. We started to push back then because it was coming to us, and it was almost like, yeah, we've seen it.
Yeah, we've seen it. And then when it got reported, actually in the cabinet, it looks like you didn't even do no job on the environment one when it goes through to cabinet for tomorrow night. It just went to your committee. It didn't do no work. So if you just read it, and you'll know what I mean. Right. So we're moving on to we agree on that then? Yeah, just for comment. I think that we had moved back to that, and we did that whole scrutiny review, not to send us stuff just to comment and note. You know, I think that. Did you read on that, didn't you?
Well, I did it with Lucy, but Lucy
Yeah.
did it a lot more, and was that the noting reports are to go out as 2 note reports are to go out as briefing notes only, and that more other reports should have more detail for members to get more involved in, so allow them to comment in them and for officers to take those comments away from part of their work, the work that they do.
And also, when there is a comment that's really quite relevant, you know, it needs to be recognised in the cabinet reports, because I listened to that and when I've read the cabinet report, that the whole environment, all what went on, and they said we don't agree this, we don't agree that, and all it says in the cabinet report is this went to scrutiny. You know, then people spent 2.5 hours going through those reports to say it just went. You know, so when there is, you know, something that needs to be added to a cabinet report, you know, we're taking the time to come here. And we're reading, you know, we could take our reading time and our meeting time. That's a whole lot of time just to when it went to the scrutiny committee.
We're not really doing our job, are we, really? Because this is like, this garage one has come to 2 years now, and we're not really.
We've had a lot of money in it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So could I just check so that we're clear, because do we want to keep it as a standard item for next year? And if so,
Absolutely.
what would be the outcome that you would be expecting to see? Because we're reporting on performance, we're reporting on LEDs. What would you like to see as an outcome? Because they say we're reporting on the performance indicators and on investment on
She
the
wants to
rear.
see paint some doors, right?
I
Tell
just
her how
want to
many
see some
doors.
improvement, Evelina. I know you haven't been with housing for long, but this came 2 years ago, and we were told that it was going to happen. We was going to do a project in one of the areas, and we was going to see a difference. I haven't seen it. So to me, I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but for 2 years, for something not to come to fruition, all right, we might have built 2 bungalows, you know, but to me, that's not enough. I want to see something. What's the point of being on overview and scrutiny? And as Councillor Fletcher said, we sat on cleaning and greening, and we really did thrash it out. You know, because we are an overview and scrutiny. We hold you to account, really. On I want to see some action. You know, and we're not.
So really, it's down to how we invest the money. So because we're showing that we're investing the money, but it's not in the way that
she
you would like.
She wants to see the results of what the
to
money
be
is
invested.
Otherwise, it's no point in coming to us, really. No, really. Yeah.
I guess it's a question of agreeing actions, and then the next time we see it, we want to see those actions have been actioned.
Reaction.
It's in the wording, isn't it? It's in the wording. Overview and scrutinising.
That's it.
What we're doing.
And there's something. There seems to be a sort of what's the best way of saying it? There's a pattern in the way these reports are. I mean, it's down to anybody, but the reports are produced with a very standard recommendation, which is read, commented.
And if you don't pick up something that's underlying, you know, then you're run over the coals with. Well, it went to scrutiny, but you have to dig in and find some stuff sometimes.
Well, Lynn and I, we're quite. I hope we're good chairs, but we've got to hold people to account.
Yeah.
Because it's no good keep noting something and saying, oh, this may happen and this may happen, and I just want to see it, and then we can throw it out. Yeah. It's done.
I guess I would expect to see read and commented, made recommendations, because in each of these cases tonight, for instance, we have made recommendations.
Yeah.
And there should be the possibility for each of these reports to note the recommendations of the committee, so that when it goes to cabinet,
that's it.
Those recommendations should be clear. Now, they can agree, they can disagree, but there should be a place. Well, yeah. But as a scrutiny committee, if we're not making any recommendations, we're not doing our job.
No.
So I think it's a sort of a structural thing in the way those reports are structured. Using your words tonight.
Grace, is there anything we
I
should?
just want to say, all this was formed as part of the scrutiny review that we undertook last year, but I have made a note of members' comments, and I'll discuss this with Lucy, and we'll look into the project again. It may be something that we'll have to review again, but as for comments from scrutiny going to cabinet, officers should be updating their reports and informing cabinet members of any comments that were made at
Nothing
scrutiny.
in that tomorrow night's committee. It's 3 lines. It just says this went to overview and scrutiny, and that was it. And it doesn't even say that they've pushed back on those cuts tomorrow night.
I mean, I asked to speak 3 weeks ago, and I never heard from anyone. And then I was pushing to speak at cabinet, you know.
Sorry, Chair, I'd like to, I'm glad Grace mentioned that review, because I recall it being discussed in the committees, and actually that was one of the things we very strongly asked for at the time of the review. I don't think, unfortunately that review was completed, and we're still asking for the same thing.
Okay.
All right then.
We'll discuss.
I think if we give it to Grace to go away, because this is still the formal meeting,
don't treat the messenger.
But yeah, I think it's just that we want to see some stuff. Okay. So I'm going on to item 9 now, which is the work programme. And earlier in the evening, Sue suggested that the damp and mould report should come back. How soon do you think we could have that back?
Well, I think there will be a report that you might want to see after the results of the stock condition survey, which won't just be on damp and mould, but it will be on the stock condition survey overall. Now that won't be finalised till probably May. So that's not an ideal timing.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So it will come to maybe the June-ish committee of this.
Why does that take so long, sir?
Well, they'll be surveying through till the end of March. Then we've got to, and then we've got to analyse all of the data and the report be written. So we're talking for the stock condition survey. We're talking over 3,500 surveys that will feed into that.
It's a bit of a drip approach.
So we think maybe about the June report next year.
But as part of that, we could bring at the same time an update on where we are against the ombudsman
Yeah.
recommendations on damp and mould, or that could be a separate report.
No,
Up to-
yeah.
up to scrutiny.
That'd be really useful actually, because that would start to give some idea of how things.
And we
are
can benchmark our improvements as well. I think that is going to,
Yeah.
you know, maybe set the scene a little bit.
Definitely.
Would be nice on overview and scrutiny is to see some things come to fruition and then go put aside.
I think that what we'll do then, I think that, you know, it's not for me to make the decision, but it will, you know, because it will be next year now, that in the very first meeting, the scrutiny committee chooses a project for the year that they want to make a difference on. Something within, you know, housing, and then we have like a task and finish and do a year's, you know, because I think that was in the review as well, wasn't it? About scrutiny having projects, special projects that they focused on. Yeah.
It should have been agreed at the beginning of the
Yeah.
year, so it runs year long.
Yeah, so I don't think we was asked to agree one, so we didn't. So, but I think that needs to happen at the very first meeting of the housing overview and scrutiny between the committee. They agreed a special project of the year. Yeah. Okay. So anything for the work programme that's anything coming forward that's not on?
So I think the piece of work that Julian mentioned needs to be timetabled, and the housing development programme update, Keith's update is sort of the standard update that, again, bearing in mind your comments might not be the way you want to receive it, but I think Julian also mentioned the wider strategy.
Yes, it did, and he was hoping to have that. So if it's ready, it will come.
That's right, yeah. So I don't know whether he'll be ready for January because it's early in January. It's more of a March, because I think he mentioned February,
He said
not
he might try
knowing.
and get. Didn't he say he was going to try and get it next month?
Yeah.
January.
All right. Okay. I seem to have heard February, but that's, you
I
know.
think he did say that actually in
Yeah.
January, you know, say trying to get in January, it could be the end of January. I mean, if we maybe said March.
Yeah.
Probably more. I would think it's more realistic.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay.
Especially now that he's not on the call to confirm or.
By the way, we moved you up a lot.
Yeah.
That's fine.
All right.
Nothing else? Nothing in the pipeline?
Black shop's fun.
Not in the black shop. Back it up. Right, okay then.
Great.
Right, I'm closing the meeting at 9:15. Thank you everybody.
Thank you.